the show! Once again, we have a fabulous lineup of guests to energise and inspire you.
It's time to wake up your wow with your host, international award-winning speaker, Cath Vincent.
On the show, Darren Cottingham on your driving aptitude and attitude. Wine tasting is good for your brain, says connoisseur Kelly Brown. Innovator Anthony Ardelean on the revolution of internet speed.
All I really need is a cabin and a ward.
And in the music slot from Wilde Records with Jesse Wilde, original music from singer-songwriter Phil Edwards. All this and more to wake up your wow. So Darren, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now listen, you're something of an expert in online training, but why did you choose to specialise in driving?
Well, I think as a kid, most lads are interested in cars and they have toy cars. And I've just taken that through to adulthood. And then we both live in Auckland, so you just need to look around, don't you? And what's the biggest pressing need in Auckland? And it's,
yeah. So you've never grown up, is what you're telling me.
Basically, yeah.
So you're right, Auckland traffic, I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare. What kind of problems is that causing for drivers?
Well, I think we've got a lot of new people coming to Auckland and the roading network can't cope. So we've reached a critical mass now. And there are little things that we can do in terms of teaching people how to drive, such as if the middle lane's going faster than you, when you move into that middle lane, you cause a traffic jam behind you that flows backwards through as people brake. Yeah. And the culmination of all of these little movements causes traffic jams. Yeah. If we all stayed in the same lane, traffic would actually flow much more smoothly.
So there's a calculation that says if you quickly nip across, the knock-on effect is much greater than...
Yeah, there's some really interesting fluid dynamics equations around this. And it's called a jammeton, if you want to look it up online.
A jammeton, that's worth knowing.
Yeah. Sounds like a musical term.
Yeah.
But
and this will be a problem, you know, worldwide, wherever people are flocking to a new country and maybe don't know the rules of the road.
Yeah, I think that people arrive in a country and assume that they can drive, and they can. But if we take New Zealand, obviously we've got a lot of immigration. There's 24 countries that have an agreement with New Zealand where you can simply swap your driver's licence, and 19 of those drive on the right. So you could get here...
What?
Yeah.
Hang on, you can drive on the right in a certain country and come here and trade your licence in and start driving straight away?
Yeah, usually within a couple of days. So if you passed your licence in Portugal, you can come here, hand your licence in and go, right, I've never driven with the steering wheel on the right before. And I've never seen these road signs before. But then that applies to tourists as well, because tourists can drive here for 12 months without having to take a test at all. There's not, even a licence issue there.
Yeah. But listen, how can you teach driving skills on an app?
Well, there's three parts to driving. So there's the kind of the stick aspect of it, which is the rules, which are enforced. Then you've got practical, but then you actually have to know the theory side of things as well, because road signs and road markings and road rules help you read the road ahead, so you can increase your safety bubble and reduce your accident risk.
Yeah, but so typically, you know, we go out, we learn to drive, and then we're kind of done, aren't we?
Yes, well, we learned to drive several decades ago, and then what have we had to do since?
Speak for yourself, mate.
A few years ago. And rules change, and car technology changes, and the number of vehicles on the road or where we live changes, but we don't ever have to do anything that prepares us for those changes. So those things can be taught online and with practical instruction as well.
Are we getting worse at driving?
I think we're getting distracted. I think the two big problems at the moment are inattention and attitude. And our whole environment is now geared towards distraction with smartphones and things going on, signage and everything.
So you mentioned two things that are a problem for driving. One is inattention, so people are texting, I guess, and stuff like that. And the other one is attitude.
Yeah, I think what happens is we're seeing a lot of television that's causing us to have these artificial attitudes. You know, we see a lot of aggression on TV that's really not natural, our natural response to situations and circumstances, and it becomes normalised. And the more people we get, the more we feel our space is encroached on, and so we feel quite aggressive.
Okay, so what would your advice be
for people to handle better attention and attitude?
Well, there are some things which general advice which is given out, things like turning your phone off and letting it go to a message, but that's quite difficult, isn't it? We feel like we've lost a limb if we've turned our phone off and we're not connected to the internet.
Why is that?
No, because we went to school a while ago, I won't say how many decades ago, but we learned to concentrate when we were at school because we didn't have those distractions, and all we would be doing is maybe looking out the window and trying to maybe see another class doing netball or football or something, or drawing pictures in the French textbook. But now, kids have distractions all the time, Snapchat and everything.
I guess our attention span is getting shorter.
I think so, and even if you look at journalism, now we digest short articles, we don't read long articles, we have little vignettes and vox pops on TV, we don't go so much for documentaries and things, we have YouTube that's short videos, and everything's short.
So tell me how this app that you've developed, this online training, tell me how that works.
It started as teaching kids, predominantly males 15 to 25, about the road rules because it's difficult to engage with them, but they were all online. And now we've got to this point where, well, it's fairly obvious that all drivers really need some kind of ongoing instruction because things change. Even in the last 3 months, we've had 3 rule changes, but most people don't know about them.
Right.
So the app works on multiple levels, right from if you're doing your initial car licence, right through to if you've been a logging truck driver for 30 years.
Right.
And it's quite easy to use just on any device and is right up to date with all the rules.
Yeah. So you're focusing on young male drivers. Is it so different for young drivers and for male drivers than it is for everyone else?
I think originally it was the messaging because male drivers were difficult to get to and difficult to explain why they should know the rules. And at the time, the project was set up in association with Performance Car magazine so that had a huge male readership, so we could talk to that audience, whereas NZTA found it difficult to talk to that audience. So while the technology and the method itself isn't specific for male drivers, that was just the initial audience that we chose.
Right. Are you saying that really male drivers are problem drivers?
Yeah, well, I think that male drivers are in general overconfident because if you think about when you're driving and something starts happening, your brain goes through a set of processes. It says, have I seen this before? What do I think is going to happen? Am I confident that I can deal with it? What should I do? The more experience you've got, the easier it is to react quickly. But when you're young, you're quick anyway because you're like, I play Call of Duty. My reactions are awesome. But then you've got this overconfidence that leads you to make these bad decisions. Younger female drivers don't have so much overconfidence and they tend to listen a little bit more. Right. As we get older, we have dealt with these situations and they become easier for us to just react to, which is why our accident risk goes down as we get older and more experienced.
Right, okay, and your insurance as well, of course.
Yeah, yep.
So what would your advice be for someone who is learning to drive or starting out driving, or probably the parent of somebody who's on that track? What would your advice be? Well,
parents tend to pass on their bad habits, but they don't know that they've got bad habits. But driving examiners know what those habits are. So it's best to get a driving instructor. It's best to get a car that's as safe as you can afford because there's a high likelihood of having an accident. Not to rush through the licence process and to get some advanced driver training if possible.
Right, okay, that sounds like good advice for our drivers, thank you.
Next up, Kelly Brown on the emotion of wine.
Kelly, welcome, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, it's a pleasure.
Now, you've been in the wine industry for 25 years, that's like a quarter of a century.
I know. Don't remind me.
Sorry, you look great.
Thank you.
Is it the drinking?
Yes. Balance, it's all about balance.
Oh, okay. So listen, tell me a bit about the vineyard. Tell me about the life that you're leading right now.
Well, I have, like you said, been in the industry for a long, long time. I'm obviously an imported product. I come from the United States. I was sold the dream. I was actually working on a project down here in New Zealand. I was New York based at the time. And my husband now, John Belsham, is a winemaker. He founded Fox's Island 26 years ago, but he's been making wines for over 40 years now.
And he's quite prominent in the industry, isn't he?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
A legend.
He is a bit of a legend. It's amazing. You know, you think about where the wine industry was 35, 40 years ago in New Zealand and where it is today. It has come further ahead very, very quickly.
What has changed so much in the last few years?
Winemaking is a long game, it's not a short game. So things that we do in our vineyard today, we see the effects of that 5-6 years down the road, sometimes a decade. So you really do have to think about that.
That's quite interesting in today's society where, you know, we're kind of impatient about everything.
We are impatient.
You know?
We want everything now.
Yeah.
Just like me. I'm also impatient as well.
So literally, you bottle something and you wait. You know?
We do. We are really the only winery in New Zealand that cellar ages all of its single vineyard wines prior to release. We started that 26 years ago, so we've built up those cellars over time. So often our red wines are aged 5, 6, 7 years prior to release, which is a great benefit for the consumer.
Yeah. Actually, I would have to tell you, I know a couple of wines, I know what I like, and
Sure.
wouldn't really know much about the rest.
Yes. Well, that's not uncommon, and I think that people should always think about wineries that they particularly like and trust those winemakers and explore within their regions, especially when they want to learn more. I'm a big believer that people should diversify their palate. They should try all kinds of things because you should. There's such a beautiful world of wine out there to explore, just like food. So don't ever put yourself into one category.
How would you advise someone to choose a wine? I mean, obviously not by the picture on the label, which is a common way for other people, I imagine. How would you advise people to choose a wine?
Again, I always suggest people, often think about the quality. A lot of people think about the organic produce they're having, but they don't think 5 minutes about the quality of wine that they're putting in their body as well. And for me, I think it's really important that there's really good winemaking behind it. A lot of people's allergies to wines have a lot to do about the choices they're making, not actually the wine that they're doing.
That's a really good point because, it's very topical now to think about organic food and all that kind of stuff. Right. But, I'm sure people don't think about that with wine.
Not entirely, and I know it's difficult because it's not fully transparent. New Zealand is amazing in the sense that they really led the world on the sustainability program. So what's interesting is where in the United States, if you're certified sustainable, you're really fantastic and this leader. Whereas here in New Zealand, everybody's like, well, of course you're sustainable because it's required. However, there's everything you can do as a wine company that you can actually further those basic needs. So we take extra notches in everything we do. So we farm naturally and organically, not certified organic, but the reason is we really focus on the quality of our grapes, like the quality of our produce, just like a chef does. Yeah. So if you have a beautiful, fresh piece of fish coming in, you don't mess it up too much. Yeah. You really just do things to highlight it. And that's the same thing we do with winemaking. We really focus on the quality of the grapes so that when we come in to the winery, John gets to do his magic. Yeah. He's not trying to fix something.
And John's a bit of an innovator, isn't he?
He has. He's been really terrific on that forefront on multiple things. Like he said, it took him 5 years to learn how to make wine and then kind of 35 years to really make great wine, kind of unlearn what he learned, really. We do things like indigenous fermentations, which means the yeast that live in our vineyard make our wines. We're not buying boxes out of a lab. And that has a whole nother headspace. So some of the things that we do completely freak people out because it's natural. Yeah. Being able to, with 3 other people, lead the initiative for the screw cap here in New Zealand was really quite revolutionary. It took a very common product like screw caps. We used it in our preserving and our cans. It wasn't a new product, but adapting it to wine really changed that. And really for John, he said once we understood the science, it was a no-brainer. Yeah we did it
because initially screw cap was cheap wine had screw caps.
Yeah, and that's the irony, is that cheap wine had the best closures. Really, because you didn't have a corked bottle. A lot of people don't actually even know what a corked bottle tastes like. Yeah. So in the industry,
that's a bottle where the cork ends up kind of contaminating the
exactly.
Wine. Yeah.
So you work really, really diligently to make that wine perfect, and then you put it in a bottle and a closure that actually taints the wine.
Yeah. So how much of your time do you spend tasting?
A lot. It depends on what we're doing. When we're blending wines, it's a very different scenario. Blending wine is really, really tricky, and it takes a lot of time. John, obviously, that's his world, so he does all of that. I spend a lot more time tasting with consumers and talking to them and doing education and really walking them through what they're experiencing. Most consumers tell me that, they're not very good tasters, and I don't believe that at all. So I really try and help give them a few building blocks that they can actually adapt to all parts of their life.
Yeah, and it uses a lot of your brain, doesn't it, wine
It does,
tasting?
actually. There's a new study out that actually shows that wine tasting is quite complex about everything that goes into it when you're tasting wine, and you're actually using more of your brain than solving a complex math problem.
Wow.
So there you go. It's healthy for you. It's good brain workout, brain food.
Well, that's a perfect reason to drink more wine.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a
Kelly.
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, if you've been watching the show, you know that I'm rather hastily committed to write a book in 30 days. In fact, I'm going to dictate it using Dragon software. Now, the exciting thing is, if you've always wanted to write a book, you can join our Facebook and get all the support you need from everyone else who is also committed to writing their book. You know you want to. Give it a go. Next up, broadband guru Anthony Ardelean on faster internet.
Anthony, welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So listen, we are consuming more data than ever before. What is the state of broadband technology?
So basically what's happening today is that we have what we call a convergence of technologies around the world.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, once upon a time, you picked up the telephone and you got voice over the phone, and we were happy with that. And
The
a lot
old
of people,
days.
the good old days, yeah. And some of us still like to live in that time. In actual fact, up until 2 years ago, 60% of connections in New Zealand were actually just voice, what we call baseband services.
Yeah.
Now, 2 years later, all of a sudden, we've had this massive uptake in broadband systems around the country. A lot of that's due to a lot of the marketing campaigns that have been run on Fibre and broadband. And it's become an extraordinary part of our lives. Without it, we can't survive. Without it, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but if you don't have your mobile device, if you don't have your iPad, or if you've left it somewhere, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
We can't function.
Yeah.
So it's become a really integral part of our daily lives. So we expect it to work, and we expect it to work well.
And we want it to be quick.
And we want it to be quick.
Yeah.
We don't really want to know the science of how it gets down that pipe and gets to us. We just want it to work.
Yeah.
And that's where people like myself come in to the equation, because we work quietly in the background to make that happen.
Now, you're something of an innovator, though. And so you've been working on Fibre.
That's right. So one of the things that we noticed 3 years ago was that we're coming to a point now with this convergence of technologies where we have people wanting to use multiple devices in their premises. They want to use their smart TVs, they want to use all their mobile devices, their iPads, their phones, streaming multiple devices that are using a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
What we find is that what people tend to talk about today is throttling of that bandwidth. In other words, they get shuffling when they're trying to watch Game of Thrones. It's getting right to the critical part where, someone's about to get, something happen to them.
And it kind of spools,
And
doesn't
it kind of
It's like,
spools, and it's like, oh my God, it's an anticlimax. And you might do that 3 or 4 times, just to get through your Game of Thrones. And that can be really frustrating.
And that's a bandwidth problem,
That's a bandwidth problem.
because you're using too much stuff all at once, as we all want to do.
Correct.
Yeah. So how do you solve the bandwidth problem?
Well, the best way to solve that problem is to actually create a good connection in your internal premise cabling at home or in your business.
Right.
And one of the big things we talk about in broadband today is we talk about the speed. The speed is a big thing, and it's important, and that's true. But what's behind the speed are 2 things. You have a big water pipe and a little water pipe, and then you can have a water tank behind those pipes, right? The water tank is how much content in Game of Thrones we're wanting to download, because we want to get it at 1080, we might want to get it 4K high resolution, and we want to get it on demand. So that's your content. Then you have your water pipe. Now the water pipe, depending on the size of that, is your bandwidth. If you have a big water tank and a small water pipe, what's going to happen is it's going to take a long time for that content to work its way through that pipe.
Yeah.
And that's where your shuffling comes in.
Okay.
If you have a big water pipe connected to that water tank, it's going to stream through there a lot more quickly.
Okay, this is brilliant because I don't think I've ever really understood this before, so thanks. But so in terms of the thickness of the pipe then,
Yes.
what are your options? How does that relate to fibre or broadband or, you know, whatever kind of connections you can have?
Well, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about and a lot of the campaigns is how we can get fibre to the home or fibre to the door.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And fibre...
So fibre is fibre optic cabling?
That's correct. So we're talking about fibre optic cabling, and we're talking about the technology whereby instead of using that plain old telephone system technology we were talking about before, we are now putting laser. All of that information is streamed through in the form of what we call a laser beam. And basically what that does is it means you can push a whole lot more information through that pipe. So enter the fibre to the premise. So what tends to happen in today's technology is that's what we get. We get fibre to the door. We'll get fibre to a little box outside the home, but everything from that box to your ISP modem, that's your internet service provider, everything from that point will still be copper. 80% of homes in New Zealand and in Australia that are existing homes are substandardly cabled.
So what you're saying is you can get a nice fat pipe to the house, which is basically using fibre optic, how great and exciting,
Yes.
but still have really skinny little pipes inside the house which constrain your content.
Absolutely correct.
So what's the solution to that?
So the solution to that is to upspec your cabling at home.
Yeah. Now you actually are something of an innovator and you have a plug and play solution.
That's correct.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
So what I have is a solution that just uses little tiny components called media converters, and it's a little plug and play system. So you just have cabling and these components that plugs together and improves your broadband instantly.
And so what would you want it be for future proofing? For an individual or a business, what would you advise them?
I would advise them to go for a fibre optic cable system, an easy to install cabling system that's not too expensive. What we've done is we've taken the technology which today would be extremely expensive, and we've brought it right down to a level that everyone can afford it. So that's our vision, make the world fibre, make the world aware that they can use optical fibre at home and at work to the desk.
Yeah. So really you're making fibre optic affordable for everyone?
That's correct, that's the vision.
Brilliant. Well, keep doing it. Good work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next up, the Wilde Records music slot with Jessie Wilde.
Jessie Wilde, welcome back.
Nice to be back.
Good to see you. How you been?
I've been great. It's
Yeah.
nice to see you too. How have you been?
Good. We're so polite. What have you been working on?
I've had some really awesome bands coming into the studio and some great singer-songwriters.
Yeah, cool. Very good.
How about yourself? What have you been working on?
The show. Doing that.
Didn't you promise to write a book?
I did, and I'm going to.
How's it going?
Well, I haven't started yet, you know, because you have to work up to these things. Okay. But what I have done, you'll know that we interviewed Richard Webster on the show, and he ran a workshop to help people structure their book. And so we're starting next week.
Great.
Starting writing, yeah.
So don't you have a little time frame for that?
30 days.
30 days.
30 days. So we're going to write a book in 30 days. But yeah. Hey, anyway,
I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it too. But first, who's in the studio?
We have a singer-songwriter from the Hawke's Bay named Phil Edwards.
Ah, and how do you know Phil?
Well, I met Phil through Tyler Burke, who's been doing a lot of sound with me in the studio.
Oh, yeah. Tyler's right here.
He's just over there.
Can we see Tyler? Hi, Tyler. Yeah. Well, listen, Phil's here right now, so let's hear.
Let's do it.
All I really need is a cabin in the woods, the fire stove, the heart of my home, to live life like I should. Don't need a lot of money, don't need a fancy car. I just need you, and you have me. Oh, listen to our hearts and live a simple life and leave the city lights behind and talk about the meaning of our lives. But you tell me yours, I'll tell you mine. I want a dog named Jack who'll always come back at the whistle that I blow. And yes, of course, you can have your horse in the paddocks down below. And soon you'll see what it means to me, the simple things that make us free. Soon you'll see what it means to me, the simple things that keep us free. To live a simple life, sit around and stare into the fire and talk about the meaning of our lives. But you tell me yours and I'll tell you mine. It's lying in the sun, singing in the rain, and losing my breath from laughing again. And I know it's gotta be love. It's lying in the sun, singing in the rain, and losing my breath from laughing again. And I know it's gotta be love.
Great work.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Good receipt.
What a beautiful song.
Thank you. Cheers.
I love that. So how did you come to write it?
Well, it's kind of a song I wrote for myself to remind me of it's just the simple things that you need in life to...
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot in the show about how complicated life is getting, you know, internet and everything fast-paced. So
Yeah, well, especially in the city kind of thing. It's sort of a song that reminds me of back home and wanting to get out of the city.
Great. So what are your influences, musically and songwriting-wise?
I think the main songwriters that influenced me are probably something like John Mayer and Paul Nutini and Jack Johnson type.
yeah, I
Top
could
sing song.
definitely hear that Jack Johnson vibe in there. It's beautiful, really, really gorgeous.
Cool.
And where are you from?
I'm from Hawke's Bay, a little country town called Murakakaho.
Say that again?
Murakakaho?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but it's something like that. That's where I'm from originally. So,
Yeah, cool. Well, you probably are saying it right then.
I hope so.
And listen, as well as being a working musician, you own your own business as well, don't you?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I actually build cabins as well,
Right.
like little spare room type cabins and trailer homes and things like that.
So I heard on The Wire that you're working on a new album.
We are indeed. It's been quite a few years in the making, so sort of just get back into it full steam now. So hopefully by the end of the year we'll have something out for everyone.
Excellent. Looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah.
Cool. And how do you balance writing and producing an album with running your own business?
Well, it's sort of my hobby, so you've always got to have time for your hobbies, right? So it's always after work or something. I always pick up the guitar for an hour or so and write. So, I mean, for the album, all the material's there. It's written. Just really got to get in and get it done.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. We loved hearing you perform and looking forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks very much.
My thanks to all my special guests, to Darren, to Kelly, to Anthony, to Phil, and of course, our very own Jessie Wilde. And until next time, don't wait to wake up your wow.
One day I was on the range and like, your gun's out of your holster, right? No, it's not. And he said, no, your other gun. Right. And my fly was up there.